I don't know a more difficult problem to solve for than homelessness. Today's guest has the heart and the entrepreneurial spirit and organization, and they are making a difference. Welcome to Decision Points. I'm Doug Hudson.
I'm Scott Wood.
Welcome Wayne Walker, CEO and Pastor of OurCalling.
Well, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Glad you're here.
What is OurCalling?
So 15 years ago when we incorporated, basically I was a pastor to the homeless, crawling in the woods. We had a van. I'm grabbing guys, trying to honestly treat a gunshot wound or a stabbing wound, trying to get them in the van, get them to the hospital, leading Bible studies under bridges, behind liquor stores, deep in coffee shops. And so being a shepherd and a pastor to people on the streets, and then from then it just got a little bit bigger. So now our focus is a little bit broader. It's all of Dallas County. We have a huge team. And, the idea of being a missionary on the streets of Dallas required me to take a C-level title. We have a C-suite team because now we have a lot of staff and about 3,000 volunteers. So it's a big army.
Wow.
It's a lot of volunteers. It's incredible.
Yeah.
Where are you from? Where were you raised? Tell us a little bit about your family.
Okay. We're going to get into it.
Let's go.
No,
I can't wait now.
I got 1,000 questions, so.
Sure. My mom and dad became foster parents when I was a child.
Okay.
And so we had 60 or 70 different kids in our home from the time I was 10 years old.
And where is this happening?
East Texas.
East Texas.
Yep. Grew up in outside of Jacksonville in East Texas. And so we had kids that were abused in all the nasty ways, that were taken by the state and needed a foster home. So we had kids in our home that were in child pornography, sex trafficking, human trafficking, a lot of violence, kids that were exposed to hard drugs or watched their parents commit murder or commit suicide. So kids that literally lived through hell.
Yeah.
And so those were my brothers and sisters growing up, right? I was exposed to a significant amount of trauma. And then in college, the Lord grabbed me by the throat and set me on fire to go to seminary and go to be a missionary on the other side of the planet. And my wife and I just fell in love when we were here at Dallas, going to DTS, Dallas Theological Seminary. Kind of fell in love with the need. We started working with the homeless community in Dallas in 2001 as we were planning on going overseas. And in the process, the Lord just kind of revealed to us the need. So specifically, we work with the unsheltered homeless community. And you are business guys, market share matters, right? 20% of the homeless population are in shelters. And so if you want the greatest market share, don't go to the shelters. And so we started specifically working with those that weren't in the shelter, can't get in the shelter, don't know where the shelters are. And so even now we work with about 10,000 folks a year all over Dallas County in about 4,000 locations, bleeding over a little bit into the surrounding counties as well. We operate this big facility downtown. And primarily our focus is how do we help people walk with Jesus and get off the streets.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So biologically, do you have brothers and sisters?
I do.
You do?
Yeah.
How many of those? And
so I've got two brothers.
Yep.
Yeah, one older, one younger.
So your entire upbringing, your mom and dad were foster parents.
Yep.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that's really that was normal. That was your normal childhood experience.
Oh, yeah. We get new kids coming in every weekend, don't know where they're coming from. They could be 18 months, they could be 17, right? In all different spectrums.
And do you still keep up with some of the
Some
foster?
of them, not many.
Yeah.
Right? Some of them. Most kids that go through foster care in Texas, over 50% of them will become homeless.
Yeah.
Right?
Wow.
When you live through that kind of hell as a child, this is that long-term exposure to significant trauma causes the challenges we see on the streets.
Do you feel like this is way early in the podcast to ask this question?
No, it's not too early.
Bring it.
But do you feel like the way you were raised with your parents being foster parents, seeing that trauma, knowing that many of these kids end up being homeless, is that where all this started for you, this early call? Was it Did it go that far back, or am I reading too much into it?
You know, when I was younger, I would have said that I resented it and hated it,
Yeah.
right? Having all these kids in the house and all the trauma exposure and all the challenges, you know. Nothing is your own, right? Everything
Right.
is shared, including your parents with strangers. And so it was pretty challenging growing up. But I knew through college that the Lord had called me to do something bigger than just pursue a paycheck. I mean, I was a software developer, taught myself to code, and had my own firm, and you know, was doing pretty good six figures in the 90s.
So you built your own dashboard.
Yeah.
We're going to get to that in a minute.
We were talking about the dashboard before we started, so
We're
we'll
going to
come
get back
to the dashboard.
He evidently has an unbelievable dashboard. So, okay, keep going.
Well, so when I got out of software development, and because when I moved to Dallas to go to DTS, I realized I couldn't do both. I couldn't do software development and pass Greek, and I was a new husband, I was a new father, trying to figure out how to survive, right? And I thought, man, I'm tired of working on the next version of an app. I'm never going to do that anymore, and so I gave up software development. And then a few years into this, we obviously needed some apps to do what we do. I mean, I was one of the guys that waited in line when the first iPhones were released. I was waiting in line when the first iPad was released. And so,
incredible.
You know, within a week or two after it was released, we started trying to write code to figure out how do we grab hold of the GPS chip in the device with the data connection, with the camera to record camps and, you know, all the challenges.
All right, fill in some gaps for us. So you grew up in East Texas in Jacksonville, and then did you go to undergrad somewhere?
I went to SFA.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then what happened after SFA? Was there a gap between SFA and DTS?
So in SFA, that's where I met my wife.
What's her name?
Carolyn.
Carolyn. Do you know where you met her? Like
August 29th, 1996. Yep.
where?
In a classroom. It was actually Campus Crusade. I was leading worship at an event, and afterwards, guitar. Yep. Someone walked up and said, "Hey, this is Carolyn. She wants to be in the band." And I said, "Well, I don't know when practice is going to be, so if you give me your number, I'll call you and let you know."
You conniving.
Yep.
What a great line.
What a great line.
And then when she showed up to the first practice, I gave her a time that was an hour before everybody else.
Oh, you conniving.
Because I need to interview
She
her.
needed to
Yeah.
try out, right?
Yeah, that's right.
But no, we literally started leading worship together and doing ministry stuff together early on, and fell in love and got married, had a kid, and moved to Dallas specifically to go to seminary to go in full-time ministry.
Yep.
Did your childhood, did your upbringing harden you or soften you?
I think a little bit of both.
Yeah.
Right? I think initially it hardened me. I mean, my childhood also has an addiction story and attempted suicide and serious mental health challenges myself. And then the Lord kind of grabbed me by the throat, right? I had one of those come to Jesus moments. And what started out as a hardening, right? So my parents were not just, Jesus said to love your neighbor as yourself. And my parents applied that by loving your neighbor's children as your own, right? Kids that grew up in abusive and nasty homes, and so bringing them into their home. And so now when I look at someone on the street, you know, I don't see the crazy lady who's walking down the street talking to herself. I see that's someone's daughter. That's someone's mom. That's someone with a cognitive disability, severe trauma exposure. If that would have happened to you, the kind of stuff she lives through on a regular basis, you probably would take your life, right? So she needs a unique kind of care, a unique set of skill set, a unique amount of empathy, compassion, to be able to sit with her, even when we don't know what to say to her, and actually help her kind of navigate the system to figure out, okay, where can she go? Right? I mean, every day I hear people tell me people choose to be homeless and they want to be homeless and don't want to get off the streets. Well, I've been doing this for a long time. I don't know anybody on the streets that wouldn't prefer to stay at your home in your bed. They're usually not given good options, right? Every single one of the shelters in Dallas is full every single day. Think about that for a minute. So we'll build a new Starbucks, we'll build a new hotel, we'll build a new hospital, but the city won't allow any expansion of any of the shelters, and they haven't really in 15 years. It's the first time we added a new shelter when the bridge was built 16 years ago, right? And yet we have people that are struggling to survive. We haven't added adequate space. The city allowed one shelter to shut down their facility and build a new one, but it wouldn't even allow it to expand much beyond
Correct.
that, right? When
There
Austin
was
Street
no
was built.
increase in
Capacity. Right. And so if you look at the numbers, because they do all these counts every year, we actually have less shelter beds today than we did 10 years ago. Right?
and the population size is massively increasing.
So
Of
Wayne,
course.
frame the big picture how many homeless do we have in Dallas County? Maybe look back 10, 15, 20 years, what's been the ebb and flow in just the number so that we sort of have a baseline of what we're dealing with here, and then maybe speak to the number of shelter beds. You said 20% a minute ago, but I don't know if that's 20% of 1,000 or 20% of 5,000.
Well, Dallas is the fastest growing metroplex in the country.
Right.
What do we have? 8 million people now in the metroplex.
Right.
Right. And so the population just in general is exploding. And it is everywhere. Everywhere you look. I look out these windows, they say cranes in every direction, right? It's growing like crazy.
Yeah.
We've also increased, we actually had a protected market. The economy of Dallas was really protected for many years where our property values didn't increase for many, many years. And of course, the last few years, they've exploded since COVID. So now we've had unprecedented property value increase, which on the flip side of that have brought up lots of commercial developers and real estate folks to take down dilapidated properties and turn them into investment properties. So as a result, we've lost low-income housing. So you look at communities like Deep Ellum. No one that works anywhere in Deep Ellum can afford to live anywhere near Deep Ellum. Right? So we have these challenges where we're losing low-income housing. We're increasing in population. And in every community in the world, you're going to have a challenge with poverty in the downtown core of every community. It doesn't matter if the city is 10 million or 200, right? Small East Texas towns have a problem with poverty in their central core. And so Dallas homeless population has continued to expand year after year. We're seeing unprecedented numbers.
How many homeless people do we have in Dallas County?
We work with about 10,000 people.
Okay. Is that the total number? Or when you say we work with 10,000?
So at our calling,
Yeah.
right? So there's a lot of different ways to count the homeless
Sure.
population. In fact, every year they do a point-in-time count, right? And try to go out and survey. And this last year they went out over like 12 hours and tried to quickly survey everybody. And you're not going to catch everybody, right? So Dallas Independent School District counts almost 4,000 children that are homeless.
Wow.
Right? We have so many families living in cars with their kids that are homeless. We have elderly folks that are hard to find, that are, surviving on scraps deep in the woods. And then you have the guys that you see on the corners, right? Then you have people living in shelters, which we have right now about 2,700 shelter beds across all the shelters. We have 6 shelters in Dallas. And so when you add all that up, you come up with about 10,000 people that are struggling every single day that are in desperate need. And a lot of those deaths are very easily avoidable. And then we have we can get into it in a minute, but we have a very systematic process to get people off the streets. But, initially what people need to understand is there's a human problem that requires a solution that has been restricted for years. The philosophy is if you build more homeless service providers, if you build more service provider space, then it's going to attract more people experiencing homelessness. But you wouldn't say that about a hospital. You wouldn't say that we've got too many sick people, but don't build a bigger hospital, attract more sick people, right? You have a social problem that needs a bigger response. And like a small town that now has terrible traffic, we've not done what's needed to build the adequate infrastructure to deal with it. Shelter is not supposed to be a destination. It's supposed to be a process, right? So you're supposed to go to a shelter while you're working on a process for long-term exits. But then you come into other challenges, like where you're going to put people long-term. Is there enough voucher, federal funded vouchers for permanent supportive housing and other ways to get people into housing? And then for some people, housing is not the best option. So we're, big into data. As of today, I think we've helped people off the streets a little over 1,100 times this year, right? Housing is one option. Another option would be like nursing homes and boarding homes and group homes. Also reconnecting people with their family, psychotherapeutic recovery, rehab, detoxes, right? You have all these different options that we have available to get people off the streets. And sometimes housing is good, but sometimes people are requesting a longer term recovery
pause right
process.
there.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable today.
It's really, we've done this probably a total of 15 or 20 days over the, and today's just been nonstop. So it's obviously a lot going on in the city.
Go back.
Yeah.
Keep the train of thought going.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
When you're right kind of where you were. I don't know the exact same.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, as of today, we've helped over 1,100 people off the streets this year. And we categorize those in different ways. And some of them are in housing options, and there's a lot of housing options from group homes to boarding homes to traditional rent. Program agencies, which for us would be long-term psychotherapeutic recovery programs, rehabs, that kind of thing, sober living communities. We have shelter partners we connect people to, which connect them to government housing through the coordinated access system, permanent supportive housing options. And then we have stabilization opportunities. So sometimes people need a hospital, a psych hospital, right? We get people that are cutting themselves, or people that have significant cognitive, or they're having some kind of psychotic breakdown and need some kind of emergency temporary placement. And as we evaluate those needs, there's just still not enough beds for all the people. There's, you use the phrase, there's too much bread and not enough butter, right? There's a resource deficiency here.
So talk to us a little bit about your process
Yep.
At OurCalling, just so we have an understanding of that as kind of a basic framework, and then
Absolutely.
we got a lot more questions.
Yeah, because you alluded to it. Yes.
So technically, we collect over 100 data points on people, and we use artificial intelligence to determine the best long-term exit plan for them. So traditionally, you would send someone to like a government housing solution or a shelter. That's 2 options. Well, in our system, we've created 800 different exit plans. And we're playing Match.com using AI and some other tools to figure out what's the best long-term for you. And it may be very different, right, for you based on your very unique needs, your criminal background, your mental health, your physical capacity. You might have a different exit plan than, the next guy that comes in here. But we're helping people create these personalized exit plans, helping them execute those plans. And then once they get there, tracking their retention. Are they still off the streets? Are they staying in the program? Are they graduating? So we'll try to track them for about a year to ensure that it's working.
So let's walk that through. So
Are these people coming to your facility?
they walk into your facility, or you bring them to your facility, right?
So we work with people all over Dallas County,
Okay.
under bridges, behind liquor stores, deep in the woods, some of them in our facilities,
Okay.
some out. But every day we have police officers from every city, and there's 26 cities in Dallas County, right, that are bringing people to us, as well as Ubering, walking, people riding the bus and coming to us. We work with about 300 to 500 people a day at our facility, and then on the streets as well. And our teams are building these individualized exit plans for each person.
So what's that? Walk me through that. So literally they could walk someone through an exit plan under a bridge.
Yep. So we start collecting about 100 data points on you. We're asking very, very specific questions.
So you're literally sitting down with me.
Yep.
With an iPad. Mm-hmm. And okay, keep going. And you have a questionnaire, essentially.
Yeah. So
that
we
you
have
all built.
we have about 60 staff members.
Okay.
And some of them are crawling under bridges, working with people. Some of them in our facility. Some of them are doing all kinds of other jobs. But they're collecting data, asking you very specific questions that we've developed over the years. Some of them are very psychologically based, using motivational interviewing, helping people to kind of choose their own adventure, right? We're not saying, hey, I've got a wonderful plan for your life. We're trying to ask them, what are you looking for, and how can we help you accomplish those things, right? Maybe you want to get reconnected with your kids, or you want to get a job, or you want to get sober, or you just want to get into housing. We're going to help people. But in that process, we're collecting a ton of data points on them. Because sometimes those data points will cause us to redirect the treatment options. So, for example, we'll meet a sex trafficking victim who's got multiple personalities. Well, some of the best trafficking recovery places are not in Texas, and they're very expensive. But we're only going to send someone to a place that we would send our daughters or our mom, right? So the best places are not cheap. They're expensive. We're going to pay for it, but we're going to get her to the best one we can find. And specifically based on her need, her age, her trauma exposure, different challenges, it's going to narrow that field to what's the best place for her to go. Right?
So is that happening, Wayne, in real time?
Yes.
Is this essentially like an hour-long interview conversation?
Sometimes. So some of the folks we work with have challenges where we can't get a lot of information out of them for the first time or the second time. Sometimes we have to meet with them multiple times to get all the data that we want. I can tell you when we first started working through this new placement process about 4 years ago, we had to meet with someone about 40 times to get all the data and actually execute the exit plan. And, we went from 40 to 30 to 20, now we're about 14 times. So within about 14 meetings with the person, we're able to execute, and that's actually get them into, and when I say a placement, we're not saying, hey, there's a cool place, you should probably go there. But by the end of this, they've gone through the interview process, they've been accepted, we've transported them to the facility, they've gone through the admission process, they're actually in the program.
So when you say 300 to 500 people a day, I mean, you'd cover all 10,000 in a couple of months, but you're having
a lot of repeats,
a lot of multiples of meetings.
Yeah.
So if you're meeting on average 14 times a day, 14 times per person, then that's where the volume comes in.
Well, and the volume play is first of all getting people to come to us. We'll serve 4,000 meals this week, and we serve the best food we can find. Our chef was trained at the Cordon Bleu. We serve really, really good quality food. At our facility, you can take a shower, we'll do your laundry, we'll give you a change of clothes. We'll give out 3,500 clothing items this week. And if that's what it takes to get you to come in the door, then we're going to make sure we have the best food, clothes. We're going to give you a change of clothes. You can't get clothes every day. You can't take a shower every day. That's called housing. We can work on that, right? Everything's got accountability. You're going to come in and we're going to say, sorry, bro, you got a pair of shoes last week. You're going to have to wait a few more weeks. We're going to make sure he can get shoes as well, right? So we're going to give out resources in an accountable way, but we're using all these tools in this space to be able to create an environment conducive for a relationship. So we have this 8-step process of how we meet people and how we help them off the streets. But the secret sauce in the middle of all this is relationship, right? And that's true of everybody that sits in this chair that's trying to work in any kind of business, right?
Absolutely.
You want people to trust you. You have to build some relational equity so that they are willing to trust you with investing their funds or buying equity in their company or helping them navigate the challenges of life.
Where is your facility?
We're off of Cesar Chavez, just south of downtown.
Okay. And of let's just say that the population today is 10,000, and you're doing the work that you do. Other agencies are doing the work that they do. Your simple mind would say, "Gosh, at some point we ought to be able to get everybody off the street and in shelter or whatever." And so, 10,000 goes to 9,000 to 8, and that number goes down over time. How much of the 10,000 right now are going to, so next year if it's 10,000, how many of those how many of those people persist? It's the same group of people, and how many people of the 10,000 actually do get better, they do get shelter, they do find some place to live, they do get off the street and are no longer considered homeless. And then, so if it goes from, let's say that's 2,000, then now do we have another 2,000 coming in new? So you see what I'm trying to ask?
Sure. Let me try to explain it in a different way. It's kind of like saying, can Parkland heal everybody in Dallas County? Well, they probably could, but then next week people are going to get sick, they're going to get hurt, they're going to cut their finger or get in a car wreck. So let me see if I explain this in a different way. So pre-COVID, we were meeting about 15 new people a week. Right? So imagine a business has 15 new customers a week, and they're trying to manage that with their staff and intake, and how do we manage 15 new customers a week? Today, we're seeing about 80 new a week. 80 brand new, just became homeless, just got introduced to us every single week. So even though we might have some that are persistent, right? We may have some people that we've known for 8 years, and we're still trying to work on this plan with them. We've seen, I think, over 600 people this year that within the first 5 visits, we got them off the streets, right? And sometimes those visits can actually happen subsequently. So it might be today, tomorrow, or it might be 3 or 4 visits in a day to be able to make that happen.
Yeah.
But out of everybody we see, right, if I can categorize the whole community, and I'm going to do that with 4 fingers, right, 50% of the people that we see will get off the streets on their own without any help.
They will.
They
or
will.
can. They
will get off the streets without any help. If you go to any shelter in town, they're going to tell you half the people that show up at their shelter will be there less than 2 days and never come back again for the rest of their life. Mm-hmm. They'll apologize to their wife. They'll move back in with their parents. They'll figure it out. It's a temporary, short-term thing. 25% of our population needs a rehab, a detox, a therapeutic program of some ways. They need government housing for a year or two, a rapid rehousing program, right? 25% of them need a program that's either 6 months or 2 or 3 years to get back on their feet to sustainability. But that last 25%, the persistent ones, they have the biggest challenges, and it's not because they don't want to get off the streets. 15% of them, or of that, let's say 25, so you got 15 and 10 left. 15% of the total have long-term care needs.
Yeah.
Long-term care needs. That's the kind of care we're going to need one day. Not because we did something stupid, because we got older, right? You have people that are elderly, people that are disabled, people that will never be able to navigate the bus system on their own, people that won't be able to carry a box of food from a food pantry up a flight of stairs and figure out how to cook for themselves, people that have, significant challenges or cognitive on the autism spectrum, the physical disabilities. They're not going to get better, right? They're in most of the programs you want to send someone to, they want them to graduate and get a job. Now you're working at Starbucks or now you're a greeter at Walmart. You can't do that with a 70-year-old. Yeah. Right? You can't do that with a 40-year-old woman who's been trafficked for 20 years. She's never going to get a job at Starbucks. She's got long-term care needs for the rest of her life. And then the last 10%, that's about 15% need long-term care. The last 10% need hospice. They're just dying. I mean, we have about 250 deaths a year that we can identify and many more that can't be identified. And people are dying every day on the streets of Dallas. 5 a week is what we can identify, and many more that'll never be identified. And they're dying for the same reasons that your friends are dying, right?
So you're seeing 80 a day new now,
Brand new.
Whereas you were seeing 15 a day new.
A week.
During COVID. So do you attribute the spike to the economy? Do you attribute it to an open southern border? Do you attribute it to what? Can you point to any macro issue that is driving those numbers higher?
So let me address the border, because I get that question all the time.
Yeah.
Less than 3% of the people we serve are Hispanic.
Yeah.
And that's true across the board. You go to any homeless shelter, service provider in the community, very, very small percentage is Hispanic. And Dallas is over 50% Hispanic. So somehow something's going on. That community is so much better at caring for their own, right? We'll kick anybody out, right? But they'll take in anybody in their home. And so you've got multiple generations in a home, even people that aren't related, but you grew up in the same village, right? So the border is really not increasing homelessness per se, as much as the economy. Right? So there's a formula for homelessness. And this is the same formula across the board. It's not mental health. It's not addiction. Those are not the biggest contributing factors to homelessness. The number one contributing factor to homelessness is broken community. Basically, when no one gives a damn. You take a single mom who's working a job and her transmission goes out. She's got nobody to call. She can't get to work, so she loses her job, then she loses her apartment. It's not because she did anything wrong. It's she doesn't have community. And you have so many people that are disconnected in community, right? We may be just connected online, right? But we're not connected to real people that will show up and support us. So the number one contributing factor is broken community. You add that to poverty, and then you add that to any crisis. And we all have crisis, right? And we meet people that became homeless because they got cancer. Right? They got divorced. Right? They had some kind of little crisis or big crisis in their life, but then they didn't have community. They didn't have people that could support them. So we tell a ton of stories, and if you've been around me, you've probably heard the same story 40 times. It's because I'm not smart enough to remember all of them. But, you know, one story in particular. So we have an app that's used all over the country. It's the Yelp of homelessness. Where's the closest shelter? Where's the closest rehab? Where can I feed my family today? But in Dallas, you can use it to report where someone's experiencing homelessness. Hey, there's a guy over there. If you're walking around White Rock Lake and you see a guy, you pull out the app and our team will go there. That's what we do. We got a report not far from here a couple years ago off of near Love Field. And it was a guy that's filthy, dirty. He looked like, man, that guy needs a shave, a shower, and a shelter, right? And our team will go and easily could pick him up and try to get him, pull a string, get him into a shelter if we can find space. But we go and we try to figure out, again, collecting a lot of data. We find out this person is a missing person, that his greatest need is not a job. His greatest need is not a shelter. It's not even a shower. His greatest need is his mom. He was an SMU student. That during COVID, his depression turned into full-blown schizophrenia. He ends up at a hospital and then walks out one day and he's a missing person for 2.5 years.
Oh, my word.
Right? And so when we find people like that, and for us, honestly, that's a Tuesday, right? Finding someone who is in desperate need for community, desperate need for their family, desperate need for help, not desperate need to go get a job somewhere, right? This guy has serious long-term challenges. He needs a community of support and care that, frankly, apart from family, does not exist. And this guy, we were able to find his family and fly his mom in from Atlanta. But there's a lot of people that don't have community. They don't have family. They don't have that connection. Or their family is not worth the price of admission to try to connect.
Right.
And so when you have that broken community and you add poverty and a crisis to it, that's what creates homelessness.
Talk to us some, Wayne, about the structure. What are your biggest struggles structurally? How do you deploy 3,000? How are you managing all of that? Speak to kind of the internal here now for a minute. How you doing that?
So I love the Peter Drucker statement that you can't manage what you can't measure. You know, a lot of people poke fun at me because I do have a lot of dashboards. I have dashboards for each team. But it really helps us analyze what we're doing and are we doing it well, right? Can we actually improve the quality of what we're doing? Can we measure our capacity? Can we make sure we're focused on the right things? So let me back up a minute and tell you of a few projects we're working on. We get a lot of people off the streets, but there's one group that we cannot get off the streets because no one will take them. And it's people that are elderly and people that are disabled. You know, you try to get someone in a shelter. If you can't crawl up to the second bunk, you can't get in, right? So we've been fighting with this battle for 6 years. We came up with a plan about 6 years ago. And so we just broke ground last week on building a 500-home, tiny home community specifically for those with long-term needs. This is not for the guy that has a job at Walmart. This is for the guy that will never be able to work, right? Those with elderly and disabled, those with need supported independent living, assisted living, and even in-home hospice care. In addition to that, the technology we've built, we've got lots of organizations around the country that ask questions about it all the time. And I've been on the Dr. Phil show. I've been all kinds of places talking about our app. It's raised a lot of awareness. And so we created a for-profit now to build that app out for other nonprofits. So when you think about the structure, it's not just the structure of running this outreach organization that's working with the Unsheltered, but we're also building a housing community. We just finished our first round of $15 million in funding for phase one, and now we've got to continue raising probably total of about $80 million. And then we're building this for-profit out. So we've got lots of things going on that requires a structure that can really manage that. So, you know, we have a C-suite team. We have 5 departments at OurCalling. We have an advancement department, which is fundraising and communication, trying to figure out how to pay the bills. We have an administration department, which is HR and volunteers, because training people, caring for people, our staff care. We have staff chaplains because of the trauma exposure. And again, 3,000 volunteers, making sure we have the right people in the right seat, right? We have a program team, which is asking those hard questions every single day. Will you trust the Lord? Will you let us help you off the streets? They're the ones collecting all that data, working on these exit plans and helping people execute that. We have an operations team, which is, of course, our facility, showers, laundry, food, clothes, security, vehicles, all that kind of fun stuff. And then, of course, the finance team. So that's, you know, making sure we're audited and it's taken care of really well. I think for us over the last few years, my focus has changed from, being so much the leader as the coach, right? And really try to empower people to do their job. We've developed a lot of training materials so that we can replicate our culture within each staff member, making sure that they're all focused and honed on, what we're trying to expect out of every single one of them. We're EOS, so we've been doing EOS for a number of years. So we've got our 10-year, 5-year, 3-year, 1-year plan, 90-day quarters, rocks, and stuff like that. I just finished Stegen a while back, so went through Stegen leadership. Before that, I did Townsend, a year of Townsend, a year of Stegen, and then a number of other executive coaches, trying to figure out, not just for me, but even the rest of our leadership team, how do we invest in them to turn them into really awesome leaders so that we can help them recognize their skills and develop them to lead a team from now into the future.
It's impressive. Warren Buffett, I think, gets the credit for saying your elevator pitch is too long. If you can't say what you do in 10, 20, 30 words, then it's too complicated for him to invest. What is our calling in 10, 20, 30 words?
So let me do one a little bit better for you. I was at a group one day of funders in a foundation, and I had a guy walk up to me and he said, if you can't tell me in 5 words, I don't want to know anything about it.
Okay.
Homeless people need Jesus. It's pretty simple, right? And that's 4. Our focus is to help people walk with Jesus and get off the streets. Very simple. Now, everything we do faith-based is voluntary. We serve people of all faiths, all beliefs, that's fine. But we believe faith is most important to the people we're serving. If we help you get into a house, but your life is still in chaos and you have no community, what have we done? We just gave you an address. We just moved you and all your problems into a new address, right? We really think that people need Jesus, and we really think that they need to get off the streets. It's not time to have a Bible study on the streets. We used to do that, and if your house is on fire, let's not sit down and have a Bible study. Let's get out of the fire, right? But we really want to see people in healthy community, long-term healthy community. So really, we want people to walk with Jesus and get off the streets. It's very simple, very complex in the way we execute that, but it's seeing people live in healthy community for the rest of their lives.
It's such a big problem. It's such a, and problem may not even be the right word, but it's such a big issue. Do you ever get discouraged? Like, I'm never going to be able to save everybody, meet everybody's needs. That 10,000 is always going to be 10,000. I'm never going to get it to 2,000. Or do you ever have those thoughts?
I would be lying if I said it didn't.
Yeah.
Right? Absolutely. But I also know my limitations.
Yeah.
And I can't measure the impact of what we do on the size of our capacity. I measure the impact of what we do on the size of my God. And then I believe he can do it.
Yeah.
And we've seen miracles happen. I mean, we see people get reconnected with their families. We see women escape sex trafficking every day. We see families escape domestic violence every single day.
Can you see in your, sort of, one of the things I love about visionaries is visionaries can see the outcome. They don't need data to support. They know, they can see it, and they just go to work at, sort of closing the gap. Can you see a day where this problem is much smaller?
Our biggest challenge is not a homeless guy not choosing to get off the streets. Our biggest challenge is the rest of the community not choosing to help.
Yeah.
Right? Jesus said to love your neighbor as yourself. And there's a lot of faith leaders that the world looks at, but those words came from Jesus Christ. And if we could encourage the rest of the city to actually love their neighbor and get up off the streets and help them really survive, recognizing that we all need each other, then I think we can accomplish anything. Our vision is for all neighbors to be in healthy community.
Yeah.
cared for with dignity, and connected intentionally to the body of Christ and the services they need. To me, that's not a challenge, it's not impossible, but it requires everybody.
I want to just say, like, I appreciate and respect so much what you're doing, and I'm not sure when you were describing earlier the trauma and the difficult circumstances that you're in, your team's in on a regular basis, I'm not sure I could do it. And so I just want to say thank you and just tell you how much respect I have for what you're doing and what your team's doing, because, you know, it's hard stuff. And I got kind of a weak stomach and maybe a weak tolerance for hard things like that, hard emotional things. And so I really appreciate what you're doing. And that's kind of why I asked you the question earlier, did it harden you or soften you? Mm-hmm. Right? Because you're clearly a special individual to be able to go after this challenge and this problem and deal with the hard things that are happening every day.
Well, we have the most amazing team. We really do. I mean, it's not me. I mean, my wife and I started this years and years ago, and we have a team of people that get up every day and are purely committed because of what the Lord has done to them. Mm-hmm. We have formerly homeless individuals that are on our staff. We have people that every day are grabbing their brothers and sisters on the street and seeing lives transformed. And really, it's just a privilege to watch what the Lord's doing in them. And we don't need everybody to go down there with us. Mm-hmm. Like you say, I mean, some people say, I don't have the stomach for it. I don't have the fortitude, or it's just not what I'm called to. That's fine. But we need everybody to participate in one way or the other.
That's right.
You know, some people worship the Lord by serving a meal in our facility, and they come every week, once a week, and they serve a meal. Mm-hmm. Some people worship by bringing their clothes. You're not going to fit in those pants anymore. Just bring them, give them away. Let us give them to somebody that will.
Let it go.
Right. Some people worship by coming and serving in an AA meeting and sharing their recovery story. And some people worship by giving, so we can have the gas to drive the van, to pick the lady up whose wheelchair wheel just fell off, and pick her up in the van and take her to a recovery center, right? It requires everybody to be actively involved. It's like an orchestra, right? You have to have every instrument.
Yep.
Yeah.
Wayne, this is one of the, it's a classic business question. And one of the things I learned early in my career, I officed next to one of the largest nonprofit, it was a for-profit company that helped nonprofits raise money. And I realized nonprofits and for-profits are essentially the same thing. One just calls them donor, and the other one calls them a customer.
That's right.
So if Our Calling received $20 million, $50 million, $100 million today, what is your pragmatic takedown list of the next 1, 2, 3 priorities that you all would address?
Well, I think it's important that we have that discussion and we figure that out before the money shows up, right? And because we use EOS and because we do a lot of leadership training, we have our 10 years figured out.
Okay.
So I know exactly what we'd be doing.
What's the 10-year?
Well, in 10 years, we'll have our community finished. We'll have 500 homes out there with people living in them that need long-term care needs. We'd have a second location in Dallas. We don't need one giant homeless service provider. We need a couple of them, like hospitals. You need multiple. So we'd have another location, preferably off of Harry Hines. That's the highest sex trafficking area in Dallas County, which is one of the highest in the country. And so we'd have a second location out there. We'd have street outreach teams expanded. So not only street outreach teams in every one of the 7 police divisions in Dallas, but like I said earlier, there's like 26 cities in Dallas County, additional street outreach teams working in each one of those cities that are making a bigger impact.
And so I heard one of your first biggest problems will be, because I know it will happen, it'll be getting zoning for that second facility.
Oh, yeah, that'll be crazy. Yeah, when we go to open up a second facility, and that's in the future somewhere, right? It'll be really challenging just because of everybody thinks it's a great idea, just not in their district. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And what's interesting is, like, even when we move to where we are, right, we're down there near the Cedars, just south of I-30 on Cesar Chavez. It's interesting because, it's some neighbors that were great. We're so glad you're here because homelessness has been such a huge area there. And then some that were, of course, frustrated because, we're going to destroy the world. And there wasn't anybody experiencing homelessness until we showed up. Right? We caused the problem.
Yeah.
And yet, if we don't exist, like we've helped 1,100 times people have exit homelessness this year. We don't exist, they don't exit homelessness. Right? If we don't exist, that domestic violence victim is still going to be a victim. That girl's still going to be trafficked. That elderly person that we found in the woods today is going to die there without us. Right? If we don't exist, these systematic problems that need, the hands and feet of Christ is going to be, it's going to be there, and it's going to be a bigger problem. So we definitely need a second location in the future. We definitely need to build out more of our tiny home housing, and specifically for those with long-term care needs. But we definitely need to increase street outreach all over the city.
What is street outreach? What does that look like? What does that mean?
So we have these little cool green vans and people in cool green shirts driving around the city. And literally crawling in the woods, under bridges, behind liquor stores, deep in the woods, finding people and trying to care for them, trying to address some of their immediate needs. We don't pass out tents. We're not giving out boxes of food to help people camp. We are specifically there to help build relationships with people and walk with them through a process, a very systematic process. We're introducing people to the Lord if they're interested, and every single person we're helping them get off the streets. There's a lot of people experiencing homelessness all over Dallas County that cannot go to any facility. And so if we don't go to them, people are like, well, how come there's homeless guys around my business, around my office? There's a guy that shows up in my parking lot every day. Well, we would love to be there. And
So literally, if a business owner was listening to this in Dallas County right now, and they have a homeless person around their area, they could call you all.
Yep.
And you all will send someone to go try to visit with that homeless person.
Well, the best thing is to download our app.
Okay.
And report that, because it'll give us the GPS location, and our teams will show up there. Now, we still
So what's the name of the app?
OurCalling.
OurCalling on the App Store.
Yep. And then, but we still have limited street outreach teams.
Right.
We don't have enough teams.
Correct.
To
You don't
visit
have the
all these
capacity at the
locations.
moment to go address every one of those.
Yeah. I mean, we try to visit every location within about 48 hours, but we get a ton of reports all over Dallas County.
How many inbound requests do you get a day or a week?
Probably about 50 or 60 a week.
Wow. Talked about, business owners, if you don't love dashboards, you need to love dashboards. Get smart, get smart quickly. What are some of the key metrics you all are measuring? If you had 20 seconds a day, what 2 or 3 metrics, 5 metrics are you looking at?
How many people are we getting off the streets? And are they staying off the streets? And
So is that how many you all brought into a shelter today?
How many people we got into a long-term treatment program, into housing,
Okay.
into recovery?
Who went through your exit program. So that number you're looking at daily, we placed 7 people into their exit strategy.
Yep. Yeah. We look at those numbers daily. I have about a dozen dashboards I look at. But I can tell you we got 27 people off the streets last week, 34 the week before, 26 the week before. And where they went and how long they're staying off the streets, and is it the best long-term solution for them? When we get people off the streets, we can actually track the efficacy of the agencies that we're working with to see, is it working?
Yeah,
right?
clearly.
Yeah.
But that number, again, just so we all know, and I think this is one thing that's been so impressive, because the problem is overwhelming. I think anybody who drives in any town now, it just looks helpless. And you all are providing hope, but there is a system. So that means that 27 people last week, they've gone through that AI software, which is phenomenal, and you've placed them in what it says should be the best solution for them.
Yeah, so we've evaluated them on all kinds of different metrics to figure out what's the best long-term solution for them. Again, we're measuring, any organization that says they're helping the homeless get off the streets, the first thing you ask is, are you getting people off the streets? How many are you getting off the streets? Are they staying off the streets? Right? Traditionally, when you get someone to a rehab, it's less than a 10% retention rate. Right? Right now, because of our system, the way we're able to track it and the way we're able to put the right person in the right place, our retention rate is over 73%. Right? Can we get people in the right place?
Yep.
And then if our focus also is faith-based, right? We want people to trust Jesus. Are we having those conversations?
Yep.
Are people choosing to walk with Christ?
Yep.
Those that are interested, right? We got to make sure that we're doing what we say we do, and we can do it with excellence.
What keeps you up at night?
What keeps me up at night? Well, I have 4 kids. So where do you want to start, right?
So they're still, well, actually, they can keep you up as they get older too. How old are the kiddos? What's the age range?
17 to 24.
Yep.
Yep. You know, what keeps me up at night with work is trying to figure out how we can do the work we're called to do with limited resources. Right? So we're 100% privately funded.
Yep.
So we've never taken any government funding. All the agencies that provide have told us we don't qualify for it because we're purely faith-based, right? Our faith is important to us. We're going to communicate about Jesus, and that seems to be a restrictive factor there. So we're 100% privately funded. And also we're debt-free. We've never taken on any debt. So we raise the money and then do the thing. And so sometimes it takes a while to raise the money, right?
What's the annual budget?
6.3 this year. It was supposed to be 7. But because it's an election year and really tough on the economy, I went back to our team and had them cut off 10% off of everything just to make sure we will be fine. When the economy's tough, right, it's more for a gallon of gas, more for a gallon of milk. The first thing people stop doing is giving.
And of course, that probably, but then, as you said, then the homeless, it creates more homelessness because,
it does.
It's a vicious cycle.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thanks for
Great stuff.
being honest as well, Scott. Wayne, thank you for the conversation. Thank you for you and your wife and your 4 kids and how you all serve this county and every single human that shows up every day to our calling. So grateful for you making time today.
Hey, thanks for telling the story. And again, the story is not about me or us. It's the story of those who don't have a voice.
That's right.
Right? That are struggling on the street. And honestly, for the people watching this or listening to this, many of them have family members that fit that category, that need people that can step up and find ways to support them. So thank you.
You're welcome. And I'm going to say this as we close, and I want you to clean up my mess because you said it so well. Our biggest issue is not necessarily getting the homeless person off the street. It's getting the community to care about that homeless person on the street.
That's exactly right. And I hear all the time, they want to be homeless. They, choose to be there. That's not true. Come to work with me one day, right? The biggest challenge is...
He said come to work with him one day.
Yeah. The biggest challenge are those that refuse to help, right? Or refuse to help in ways that are strategic.
Wayne, grateful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for taking time to listen to Decision Points. Have a great day.